All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining our onX Hunt deep dive looking at our Terrain X feature. We'll give it just a minute or two to let everyone get logged in and get settled in and everything. So a couple housekeeping things while we wait. Your audio and video are turned off so we can't see or hear you. No worries if you've got noise in the background. If you do have questions, there's a Q&A bar that should be on the bottom of your screen. Use that for any questions you'd like us to answer over the air live tonight. We don't have anybody answering questions during the class. Like if you've attended our 101s or something like that, we usually have somebody in the background answering questions. So all questions will be answered at the end. I'm a one-man show tonight, so we'll go kind of through the presentation and then we will get to those questions. So I'm not ignoring you or anything. We'll just save them for the end. And this class is being recorded. We will send a link out tomorrow. So you will get a link about this time tomorrow evening. You'll get an email with the YouTube link in it, so you can go back and rewatch it, or if you have to dip out early and want to see the spot that you missed or something, that'll be emailed to you tomorrow. All of our master classes are uploaded to a playlist on our YouTube channel. So you can go to onX Hunt, the YouTube channel there, and look at our playlists. We have masterclass playlists listed there. All of our classes going back, we've been doing these for over 2 years now. So there should be, I think there's a couple hundred classes on there, darn near. So take a peek at those if you're interested in learning about other aspects of the app. And finally, we are doing a giveaway at the end of the class. We're giving away 10 onX Hunt t-shirts. So I will post the link to that in the chat towards the end of the class here. So it looks like, people are filing in here, people are getting logged in. The agenda for today, we're going to talk about, first of all, what is Terrain X and how do you access it? How do you turn it on? We'll look at some of the different filters available within the feature. We'll look at what I think is my favorite and what I think is the coolest aspect of Terrain X is the view shed. And we'll talk about how you can utilize waypoints within Terrain X and how those transfer over to your regular onX Hunt web map and app. And then not on the agenda, towards the end of the class, we'll do that Q&A and do that giveaway as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen right now so that I can pull up my web map to give you guys an idea of what this looks like. All right, so I am going to go to, I'm in the onX web map right now. So if you've never accessed this before, this is something a lot of customers don't know exists. You go to our website, onxmaps.com, pull up a page like this, click the button that says Open Map, and then Hunt Map. It'll ask you to log in. I'm going to log into my test account here. And it'll take a bit to load up here. So there we are. onX Hunt Web Map. A lot of you have probably used this before. This is nothing new. However, if it is new to you, I highly recommend using Web Map, especially for your scouting purposes. And that's really what Terrain X is the most useful for, is scouting, preseason scouting, or post-season if you want to go back and look at your hunt and look at where you saw animals. Might help clue you into why an animal was in a certain area or something like that. So there's a couple ways to get to Terrain X. The first one is over here on the right. This button with this beta flag, this red flag, that will take you to Terrain X. I can also go over to the left-hand side of my screen to this menu, go down to where it says Elite and click on Elite Tools. And I should note Terrain X is an Elite only feature. So you do have to have the onX Hunt Elite membership to access this. The Elite membership is our kind of, for lack of a better term, full spectrum membership. It gets you access to these different Elite tools, gets you access to some of our Elite Pro deals, and of course gets you access to map information for all 50 states plus Canada. For the purposes of this class, of course, we're focusing on TerrainX. So when I click on that, it gives me a little blurb of what TerrainX is about, and then click try it out. Now, I did mention it before, this is still in beta testing mode. That is a question we've gotten a fair bit. When is it going to be in the app? When is it going to be, not a beta? When is it going to be fully integrated? I don't have an exact date for you on when we hope to have this integrated. I know they're working. They're hoping to have it sometime next year, to be more fully within the web map, not in beta mode, have it more fleshed out. Beyond that, unfortunately, I don't have any information for you. But let's get into it here. So as I zoom out, you see it looks very similar to my onX Hunt, my regular web map. It is a little bit more of a basic map, however. So it doesn't have my map layers in it. So it doesn't have the hunting units, the public, private, things like that. So you do kind of want to zero in on an area beforehand that you are interested in hunting. This is a unit in western Montana. It's the Elkhorns. It's one of the most difficult to draw, if not the most difficult to draw elk unit in the state. I've never actually hunted this. I've never been lucky enough to draw a tag. So that's why I picked this, just because it's not trying to hotspot anything. The Elkhorn's a pretty well-known, bull hunting area, and I've never set foot there. So everything I'm doing here is just kind of, off the cuff. So that disclaimer there, I'm not trying to, show anybody any honey holes or anything like that. The different filters you can use within TerrainX are located on the left-hand side here. And there's really 3 of them that we're going to focus on. Your slope angle, slope aspect, and elevation band. So what these allow you to do is darken out areas of the map that you don't want to see, so that you can more easily focus on the areas you do want to see. So let's say, it's archery elk season in Montana right now. I want to find areas where elk are likely to hang out during the day. So what do elk like? In September, it's warm. Even though we're kind of in a bit of a cool snap right now, we're dipping our toes into fall. I think I heard Remy Warren say one time, elk are always hot. Even if it's 30 degrees, elk are warm, right? So they are going to be looking, especially in the middle of the day, they're going to be looking for those cool areas where they can bed down. So what's going to be coldest? We're going to start with this slope aspect right here in the middle. So I only want to see north-facing slopes. Right now, every one of these pieces of the pie is selected. So I'm going to deselect the slopes that I don't want to see. And you can see my map changes as I do that. It's shading out those non-north facing areas. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see it a little better. If I turn them all back on, you can see areas of the map getting lighter again. So I just want to see north facing slopes. Okay, that narrows down the map quite a bit. It eliminates a lot of territory. I'm not expecting an elk to bed in any of this stuff because it's all south facing, right? This might be better elk bedding area because it's north facing. There's some timber there. But we also know elk don't want to bed on super steep terrain. I think they've done, it's in the Starkey Experimental Forest in Oregon, I believe the study was done, where they looked at what angle of slope do elk bed on. And they said it was like, if it gets above like 20 degrees, they don't tend to bed on that. It's not preferred. You can imagine what it would be like if you were trying to take a nap on a 30-degree slope, for example. So I'm gonna go up to this slope angle slider here, and I'm gonna start dragging this down. So let's get down. Now we're starting to see a few spots start to darken in. Not too much. This must be a pretty flat area. But let's go down further. Let's go down to 20. Okay, so that eliminated even more country for me here. Now, these might still be pretty good areas. Some of those benchy, flatter areas next to steeper country, that might be a pretty good spot actually. If I zoom around, I can start to see, here's some flatter country that's all north facing. Here's a bunch of stuff I'm probably not interested in because it's darkened out. If I scroll down to my third filter here, the elevation band, this is something that may be pretty particular, to what you're hunting and where you're hunting. Personally, Western Montana, I haven't found, at least in the areas that I hunt. So most of Montana is not super high elevation. It's not Colorado, right? It's not Utah. We don't have a ton of elk country that's above 10,000 feet. Is there an elk above 10,000 feet in Montana right now? Probably. But a lot of the hunting is not taking place at super high elevations like you folks down in Colorado might be dealing with. But I'll highlight it anyways. So you can take a look at and say, I don't think they're going to be above, let's move it down to 7. Well, that's going to eliminate a lot of country. In this unit, that probably doesn't hold true. In this unit in Montana and kind of west central, I would probably just leave this open because there's not enough elevation change for it to really dictate where the elk are going to be. If I reset all my filters and I go down to Colorado, I'll show you what that looks like. And I'm just going to pick a random spot. Again, I've not hunted Colorado. Let's try the San Juans here. We'll zoom in a little bit and let that load up. Now, so I'm just going to mess with the elevation band right now. Let's say I'm hunting high country mule deer and I figure, hey, in this area, I'm probably going to need to be above 9,000 feet, 10,000 feet. As I move it up, you start to see those valleys filling in. I'm probably going to have to be even higher. This is a pretty high elevation area here. Need to be above timberline, say. Right? So I can close out all of that high country and only hunt those high alpine basins where the mule deer might be hanging out early season this time of year. If you want, you can still say, well, maybe where's the best feed? Maybe I only want to see south-facing slopes. Again, I'm just kind of making stuff up here. I've not done any high country mule deer hunting. But it really does allow you to key in and pick what you want to see, what you don't want to see. At the top here, you might have noticed there's this intersect layers menu. What this lets you do is it lets you kind of flip how the map filters this information. Darken complement means it's going to darken out the areas that you have filtered out. So right now I've got, north facing areas filtered out, so they're dark. If it helps you, you can flip that. So you can have it be kind of this greenish color for the areas that you're interested in. So it highlights them. Everyone's brain works a little bit different. Some people's eyes, it just makes sense for some people to have it highlighted. Personally, I prefer it to be like this so that I can see the imagery without any filter over it and just black out what I don't want to see. User's choice, right? Totally up to you what way you want to use it. Okay, so let's just stick with this, with these settings right now. Maybe I'll move my slope angle down to 30 degrees just because I don't want to hunt where it's a cliff face, right? So we've got it kind of narrowed down here a little bit. Let's try to find some glassing areas. So I'm going to zoom in. I should mention you can put this into 3D mode. So 3D works the same in TerrainX as it does on the regular onX web map. It's So right click with your mouse, or if you're using a trackpad, however you have that set up for a right click. For me, it's 2 fingers. I click on the trackpad on my laptop, and then I just move my fingers around. So it lets you get a little bit more of a real world view of what we're looking at here. Let me find a good peak with a lot that's not darkened out. This might be interesting here. I've got a lot of country that's still within my parameters that I've set here for elevation band and slope aspect. This button here that says view shed, kind of near the top of my screen with the binoculars, this is a really powerful tool here. So when I click on that, what this lets me do is it lets me see what is visible from a given area given the terrain. Okay, so to help make it a little more simple, I'm going to turn these filters off just so that there's nothing else kind of confusing the data. So if I were to sit at the top of Eureka Mountain here, this is what I would be able to see from where my mouse is. Okay, if I pull this back up to 2D, might be a little bit easier to tell. So because of the way the terrain lays, we're kind of on a ridge here. I might be able to see this basin to the north of me if I'm in the right spot. If I move a little bit, it gets obscured, right? So as you move around, this might not be a bad spot. I can see quite a bit of this basin in here if I get back to it. So this does not take into account vegetation. Should have mentioned that from the outset. It only takes into account the terrain. In this area, not super heavily forested, so pretty useful, right? If we're talking East Coast, Appalachians, maybe not quite as useful because they're much more heavily forested mountains. Where I live in Missoula, Montana here, we're west of the divide. We're a little bit wetter, especially if you go up to northwestern Montana and that kind of Cabinet Yaak ecosystem into Idaho Panhandle, Washington. Pretty mountainous country, but pretty heavily forested as well. So you do have to take into consideration, am I going to be able to see through the trees here? I can see, because of the terrain, I know I'll be able to see, but you got to take into account the trees. What I do, let me get back to Missoula here. I'll show you what this looks like. What I do a lot of times for, shouldn't have clicked the map. What I do a lot of times for spring bear hunting is when I use TerrainX quite a bit, is I will try to find an area and I know, man, there's a lot of trees up here. What I will often do is then look for areas that have been logged and get on the edge of that logging cut, or get on, if I can find an exposed finger ridge I might be able to see from, or if I can find a logging road that I can stand on. Sometimes it gives you just enough where you're able to see, through the trees and be able to get into some good glassing positions there. So on an area, like this, again, I have not been here. I might sit up here and say, wow, that looks pretty good. I can glass quite a bit. But when I zoom in, I notice north of me, quite a bit of timber. I may or may not be able to see through that to glass to the north. To the south, looking pretty good, right? Especially if I stay kind of just below the lip, I can see quite a bit of country from there if I'm looking to the south. If I get on the other side here, I can glass to the north, but using aerial imagery, I know there's also quite a few trees. Might not be so good. Sometimes you do have to go out and ground truth it to know for sure, but at least it'll save you the time of, I used to have glassing waypoint spots all over the place. Drive here and see what it looks like, drive here and see what it looks like, drive here. And once we came out with this view shed, I went to a lot of those waypoints and dropped the view shed on it and realized I couldn't see anything or couldn't see as much as I wanted to. So I just deleted those waypoints. And speaking of waypoints, the waypoints that you have saved on your account do transfer over to TerrainX. Now, they don't quite transfer over fully. And what I mean by that is you're gonna see waypoints with colors, but it's not gonna have the icon that it might have on your regular web map. So I'm gonna go back to my regular web map here. I'm gonna move to Missoula so you can see what this looks like. So here's a few waypoints I marked. You can see they have different colors. They all have different icons. None of them have the X in them. If I go back to TerrainX, you see the difference there. That is part of the beta build. Once it is fully fleshed out, waypoints will fully transfer back and forth. They'll look like they're supposed to look. So that is some feedback we've gotten. I find it annoying as well, but that's the way it is just for right now for this beta build. Let's say I find a spot I want to check out. I'm just going to pick a spot at random and say, that doesn't look too bad. I want to be able to glass that hillside to my north there. Great. I can drop a waypoint. If I went up and clicked this waypoint icon, I'm still in Viewshed. There. When I hit save, I go back to my onX web map, then I will be able to see that waypoint and make any additional changes to it that I want. So to show that one more time, I just click the waypoint button up here while I'm within Viewshed. And I've got that little icon there. And let's just pick this spot at random and hit save. And now I've got it saved there on my account. So it's not showing up yet, but if I refresh, there are those two waypoints that I just dropped. Okay, oh nice. One's right on the trail here. Might not be difficult to get to. Now if I want to, I can click on them, go back in and edit, mark them as glassing areas, change the color, change the title. It tells me it was placed within TerrainX. I can change this to glassing spot 1 or something and hit save. Okay, so that's how you mark a waypoint. You can also do it without being in Viewshed. If I turn these, let's do this. I'm going to change my filter so it opens up some more country. Let's go back to that unit I was at before. Okay, so now in this example, I only have south-facing slopes showing. Maybe we're talking rifle elk season, and we're looking for those hillsides that might have some snow burned off of them, or maybe are more windswept so that the elk can get there to feed. I still want it to be relatively low slope. And now I have all of these spots. You know, I might say, hey, this looks like pretty good. They've got some timber on the backside they can bed into. This looks like it might be free of snow if we get a good windstorm. I can still just go and drop a waypoint without being in Viewshed. You can do the same thing, similar to how you would drop it on the onX web map there. All right, so that's really all I had for TerrainX. Pretty short and sweet today. I realize we're 20, 25 minutes in. But TerrainX it's a powerful tool, like I said, especially for scouting, especially if you're hunting big country and you want to be able to save the time and effort, save the gas money to not have to drive out to areas that aren't going to be good for you. That Viewshed for glassing for, spring bear is what I use it a lot for. I hunt a lot of spring bear in western Montana. We're blessed with some phenomenal bear hunting in the spring. Rifle elk hunting, which unfortunately I'm not going to get to do this year because I killed a elk with my bow last week. I did have to drop that in there. I'm pretty proud of myself. You know, mule deer hunting, mountain whitetail hunting, which is extremely underrated. Whatever you can think of, right? Use that to help find those glassing areas. Use that to help eliminate country that on the regular onX map is like, you know, hey, that looks pretty good, but you might not be able to tell, oh, that's actually quite a bit steeper than I thought. Maybe I don't want to hike it and I just want to eliminate it. Or I'm looking for elk bedding areas and it's a 40-degree slope, which is extremely steep when you see it in real life, right? They're not going to be bedded on that most likely. They might travel through it, but if you're looking for those bedding areas, probably not going to happen. So let me get back. I'm going to post the giveaway link in the chat here and pull my slideshow back up so you guys can see that. So I'm going to turn the chat off for a bit right now, just because that link will get lost. So the giveaway link is in the chat. If you can't click on it, some phones won't let you click on links in Zoom for some reason. You may have to copy and paste it. I'll also put the link up on the screen here. So we're giving away 10 of these wall tent tees. You go to this link right here. So if you do have to type it in, type it in. Entries close at midnight tonight. I'll send an email out tomorrow morning to all the winners. We're picking 10 of them. Like I said, all we ask for is your email address so that we can contact you, your shipping address so we can get it shipped out, and of course, your t-shirt size. So let me take a look. Looks like we got some questions in here. Let me pull those up if I can. It won't let me pull up the Q&A while I'm sharing, so I'm going to stop the share and pull up the Q&A so we can answer some of these. So we're going to prioritize questions that are specific to TerrainX. I know there's some other questions in there that are not TerrainX specific. We'll get to those if we have time. I'm going to start with the TerrainX ones. Let's see. Garrett asked, is there a way to toggle property boundaries and or pins on and off in TerrainX? So your waypoints transfer over, Garrett, but right now we don't have any of the map layers built into TerrainX. So what I would recommend doing, if you're looking at an area or some areas, you kind of have preliminary where you want to look, place some pins on the private land you have permission to hunt, or maybe it's like a walk-in area, like a block management area is what they're called in Montana, or your national forest, BLM, state land, etc. I would place some preliminary waypoints so that when you get into TerrainX, you know where that property is or where that public land is, and then go from there. I agree, it's one of those like little annoyances right now. It sure would be nice to have the units and the private public. That is coming once this is more fleshed out, once this is more fully realized and into the onX web map. Let's see, Rudy asks, plans to have TerrainX as a tool within the onX hunt map to allow us to view specific hunting units and drop waypoints in TerrainX for scouting and hunting. So to answer your first question there, Rudy, yes, we do want to fully integrate this within the onX Hunt app so that you don't have to open up another tab like it does currently, and so that you can use all of the layers and the tools. Work's being done on that right now. As you can imagine, this is all built within house, so our engineers are kind of building everything from scratch on this. So that will be the situation in the future, just not right now. You did ask about waypoints. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think I demonstrated it after you sent the question in. You can drop waypoints and they will transfer back and forth between the two. Let's see, Mike asked, can you add notes to the waypoint? Within TerrainX, you cannot right now, Mike. You can basically just drop that waypoint. Then you have to go back to your regular onX web map, change the color, change the icon, the name, and add notes, just like you do normally. James asked, you mentioned Appalachia. What would you say is the biggest benefit of TerrainX to those who hunt in Appalachia? You know, I will admit my ignorance. I have not hunted that country much at all, James. So my knowledge is a bit limited. I'd love to sometime. But if you're, I'm guessing primarily hunting whitetails, maybe black bears, maybe you draw one of those coveted, one of those few elk tags in, Virginia or Kentucky or something. You could certainly use it if you know, let's use whitetails for example. If you know they tend to hang out on a certain side of the mountain, you can use that slope aspect for sure. You could also use it to look at the slope angle, to look at, hey, where is it too steep? You can really highlight those flatter areas because, whitetails are like you and me. They want to conserve energy. They're not going to just go hiking through the real steep stuff if they don't have to. They might use it as escape cover if they're being chased, but in their day-to-day lives, if you go hiking through, at least I know out here in Montana, you go hiking through and you'll find deer or elk trails. And they generally know the easiest way to get through the timber and the easiest way to traverse the mountains. They're going through the easy stuff. So you could use the slope angle for that. Again, mentioned the slope aspect. If it's real hot, early season, you're hunting deer, they might want to be on the north side because it could be 5 degrees colder or something like that. So those are the two things that I would stick with there. Again, having not hunted that area myself, my advice is a bit limited. Let's see. Alex asked, will TerrainX be in all plans? So TerrainX is an elite only feature. So if you have the premium membership, you would need to upgrade to elite to access TerrainX. And then asked about seeing real-time wind direction and speed on TerrainX. So once we get TerrainX within the app fully, so once it's within the regular onX web map, then you'll be able to use that like wind on a waypoint feature and weather and things like that. So that won't be added to the beta. We're basically, what we're trying to do and what we're working on right now is adding the beta to the regular map, if that makes sense. Sammy asks, only for computer, correct? Yes, TerrainX is only available on the onX web map right now. It is not available on the mobile app. See, Jacob asked about hunting in the southeast who are hunting whitetails on benches, ridges, best benefit to utilize. Jacob, I would say similar answer to when I was talking about Appalachia earlier. Use it to find the less steep areas. If you're looking for some of those benches, use it to denote what side of the ridge is which. If you're looking for north facing or southwest or whatever. Again, I've not hunted the southeast myself. Mostly hunted, Midwest and Montana. But those would be the two features I would use. If you know through local knowledge, they tend to hang out on this slope aspect in the morning and in the evenings they're over here. Or maybe it's a vegetation thing and hey, most of the oaks in my area grow on this side of the ridges. You could use TerrainX to help you highlight those more easy. Let's see. Will there be alternative base aerials in time? What about illuminated areas with the sun at certain times of day? As far as base aerial imagery, we do have a couple features right now within the regular app that are, we have our regular base map imagery. That there's no major plans to change how that functions anytime soon. We're updating it currently. We're updating the states that are a little bit old. We also have the recent imagery. Couldn't think there for a second. The recent imagery feature where you can take a look at like 2-week increments of what the imagery has looked like. So if you haven't taken a look at that, check that out, Garrett. As far as the illuminated areas at certain times of day, that is something I would love to see within the app so that you can see, hey, at noon, what's going to be in the shade, what's going to be in the sun, both for being able to tell, hey man, that mule deer buck might get up and move out of this bed because the sun's going to be hitting him and he's getting hot. He's going to want to move to the shade. Conversely, I want to know, am I going to be sitting in the sun or am I going to be sitting in the shade? Because I want to be in the shade because it's harder for animals to see me when I'm in the shade versus in the sun, especially if it's rifle season. I'm wearing blaze orange and I shine bright out there on the side of the mountain. It's good questions. Let's see. Tom asked, can you save a map? So within TerrainX, it's only on the computer. There's no saving an offline map with this TerrainX data, Tom. How you would use this right now out in the field is do your pre-scouting on TerrainX, mark your waypoints. If I just stick with we're looking for glassing areas and bedding areas, and that's what I want to look for. Go to TerrainX, mark those waypoints, then go to your web map or to your app, either way will work. Then go edit those waypoints and mark the glassing areas, mark the bedding areas, and then you save an offline map on your phone just like you normally do. As far as TerrainX goes, there's no real offline capability there. Dave asks, any recommendations for upland or grouse hunting using TerrainX, i.e. looking for deforested or other elements? As far as the forest goes, I would just use the regular onX hunt map. It's going to show you the aerial imagery. You're going to be able to turn on those like logging layers and burn layers and things like that. I could see some use for mountain grouse hunting. So dusky grouse are one of my favorite things to chase in western Montana here, or blue grouse, as some people call them. And they will reverse migrate. They go higher as the season goes on. So they will move, when the snow comes, they move up. So you might look and say, and use that elevation band to eliminate terrain, to just highlight, all right, I think they're going to be above 6,000 feet right now, and just eliminate all that country that's below 6,000 feet. Conversely, rough grouse tend to stick in the bottoms. You might eliminate all the high country and only focus on stuff that's below 6,000 feet. As far as, pheasant hunting, I don't see a ton of use for TerrainX, to be perfectly honest. Rough grouse hunting in the Midwest that I grew up doing a lot of, similar thing. Quail hunting, I could see using that. I haven't done a ton of, and I'm talking like desert Southwest quail or mountain quail. Haven't done a ton of that, but again, if hey, they're likely to be at this elevation, I'm looking for Mearns quail in Arizona, and they like that kind of oaky savanna country, and I know it's likely to be in this elevation band. You could use it that way. Scott asked, ways to see trails and roads in TerrainX. So our regular base map data, like your main roads, do transfer over. Any of our roads and trail data that is a part of a layer. So, our major highways, city streets, that's baked into the base map. That's not a layer. Those will show in TerrainX. But as far as, like your motorized roads and trails layer on national forest land or your hiking trails, things like that, right now there's not a way to see those in TerrainX, unfortunately. Dusty asked, why does the map almost all turn black when I click on the slope face buttons? So when it turns black, that means that those areas are filtered out. So the slope face, that's the one, that angle, that's the one that looks kind of like pieces of a pie or a pizza. When they're green, that means that's what I want to see. Green means go. If they're blacked out, that's going to black out those areas on the map. So if I have all northwest, northeast, north green on that pie chart, everything else is going to be black. You can also double check that your angle is wide enough to show you the terrain, as well as the elevation band. You can really just block out the whole map if you have that elevation band set too strictly. Let's see. Spencer asked, rifle elk, what are you searching for with Terrain X? So it will depend a bit on time of year and where you are. You know, Montana is going to be different than Arizona, but let's say we're talking states with a plethora of rifle elk opportunity. So we're talking Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, the states that have the more easily accessible tags. If there's a lot of snow, and I know what the snow depth is up high, I think I read recently it takes a couple feet of snow to really move elk down. And you know, a big bull, it might take more than it's going to take the cows. So if you got a cow tag, or you're just looking for any bull, cows and young bulls are going to be where the best feed is. So you're going to want to look for those areas, typically down lower elevation, maybe on slopes that are a little bit more windswept, maybe south facing because they get more sunlight and that might burn that snow off. Big bulls are going to be in those sanctuary areas. They're probably not going to be hanging out with the cows and the young bulls. They might be hanging out with other mature bulls. You might find 3, 4, 5 mature bulls together, but they're going to be in the gnarliest kind of country, and they're going to be looking. You know, you got to remember, right now those bulls are running around screaming their head off, trying to breed cows. They're not eating. They're drinking water still, but they're not really concerned with food. They're going to be losing a lot of weight. So when most rifle seasons are open, you know, especially, you know, early October, they're still rutting. So a state like Wyoming that opens a lot of places on October 1st, I would hunt them just like I do archery season. A state like Montana this year doesn't open until October 26th. That's the latest our general season, our rifle season can open here. And then it goes all the way through, I think December 1st or 2nd is our closing, that Sunday after Thanksgiving. So they're going to want to get away from hunters, first and foremost. They're going to want to try to find areas where they can feed and pack some pounds on again. And they're going to be looking for safety and food in close proximity. So look for areas that are going to provide those things. The thing, you know, one of the biggest things, especially on general units, public land, they're going to want to get away from people as best they can. So look for areas that are either far from trailheads, or maybe it's a steep hike, or there's some deadfall or anything that's going to keep people out to provide that sanctuary for elk. I would focus on south-facing slopes. So what I would personally do, and again, I'm not an expert on this by any means, but talking with other people that are, try to find a good glassing spot where you can glass south-facing slopes that have pockets within the timber that are open, that might have that grass, that feed for them. Areas that might burn off where there's less snow, things like that. That would be my starting point, at least there, Spencer. Dylan asked, already using Terrain X for an upcoming Colorado hunt where the property lines be added soon? If you're hunting this year, Dylan, no. They won't be added in this year unless I missed something in a meeting. Kind of what we have in Terrain X right now is what you can expect to have for this season. We are always a little trepidatious about making big changes to features within the app during hunting season. We don't want to, with software development, you can write some new code and introduce some new features or do some things that affect something not even related to it within the app, and you could screw something up. We don't want to do that. Our number one goal right now through the end of the year is for the app to be as dependable as possible. So we're not planning to make any major changes because we would hate to release a new app version that maybe has some performance issues for somebody while they're on their once in a lifetime hunt. So what you see is what you get right now for Terrain X. Let's see, we'll do a couple more questions here. Garrett asked, how do Terrain X and LiDAR differ for surface level details? So a true LiDAR is gonna be more detailed. We don't currently have LiDAR data within the app. It's something that's being looked at, but Terrain X currently utilizes our current elevation model, which is not it's not LiDAR, right? LiDAR is kind of the gold standard as far as, I mean, you can see like boulders and things on it. So TerrainX isn't going to have that same level of detail. In the future, I would love to see it, but it does kind of give you those other tools in the absence of LiDAR. So it still is, in my experience, it's still been accurate enough for hunting scenarios to be able to see what you need to see. Let's see. Ron asked, when I open the map on the computer, how do I get to Terrain X? Let me pull that back up here. So let me get back to my web map. Should share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm within the web map right now. Couple ways to get to Terrain X. You can go over to the right-hand side. There's a toolbar here. This one with the red flag on it will take you to Terrain X. This is a bit of a bug. It sometimes will ask you to log in again since it is a new window here or a new tab. I should be able to type in my test account email address. And then you can log in. That will take you to Terrain X. Additionally, you can go over here to the toolbar on the left side, click on Elite Tools, and click Terrain X, and click Try It Out. That will bring you there as well. Let's see, Dusty he's still having an issue. No matter what direction I choose, it blacks out almost the whole map, and I have all settings open all the way. Is it because it is a super flat area? Well, let's go to a flat area. Let's go to northern Minnesota here. Let's get away from there. Let's go here. I know this area is pretty flat. So it's open for me. Double check that you don't have that slope angle. You know, in a flat area, you need it at 0, most likely, or really low. You can see how flat this area is. Nothing's really over 15 degrees. Make sure your slope aspects are all turned on because, again, in a flat area, they can get, you know, one will turn on and off a lot of area. And this one, a lot of this must be just a slight north slope. So it blocks a lot of that out. You can also turn these off. I should have mentioned this before. You can toggle them all off and on. So if I don't care about slope aspect at all, I can toggle this button. That will turn it off and on quickly for me. All right, so there's a bunch of other questions in there. Some of them are just kind of general hunting, scouting tips, bit beyond the scope of this class here, so I apologize. Not able to answer all of those, folks. Do check out our previous master classes. We have a whole bunch of scouting ones that we've done on there for a bunch of different species. We've done different, you know, classes with folks like the Eastmans and the Element and different, you know, hunting folks you might have seen on YouTube or read their magazine or something. So we've had some experts on previously that are better able to answer some of these questions about, hey, what do I look for in this area or that area? So with that, I am going to post the giveaway link one more time in the chat for anybody that still needs to enter that. And I just want to thank everybody again for joining us tonight. There is a survey at the end of this class. If you just let us know what you thought of the class. And then the fourth question is an optional one. You don't have to answer it. But if you have a topic you'd like us to cover, something we haven't covered before maybe, that kind of helps us build out our schedule for the fall. We do have on our website the rest of September and most of October scheduled out as well. We're doing another deep dive on our tree and crop layers. So folks that were talking about, deer hunting in Michigan, deer hunting in Appalachia in the southeast, those are super critical layers in my opinion for hunting those areas where maybe elevation isn't as big of a deal like it is here out west. Maybe slope aspect isn't that big of a deal and you're hunting different hunting different vegetation types. Check out that class. That's October, I want to say 23rd, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, mid to late October. And yeah, fill out that survey question. Let us know what you'd like to see. And if we have a pretty popular topic, we'll try to get it added to the class schedule for the future. So hope everybody has a good rest of your night. If your hunting season is open, hope you've been getting out there and getting after it. If you're still waiting for a season to open, I'm there. Well, I'm not there with you. I've been hunting, but I feel you. It always stinks to be able to, when you're seeing other people having success in other states and you're sitting there waiting, but it'll be here soon enough, and hope everybody has a successful fall. I'm stumbling over my words, so that's probably a sign that I need to end this one and bid everybody a good night. So thanks again, everybody.